Let's talk more about that now. And we also have the Pentagon today saying there's no more money for Ukraine as Paul Rieckhoff rejoins us, and they're waiting for Congress to act. So we're going to get to Ukraine in a moment. On what John's reporting out of Gaza, boy, those headlines, at least 9 dead at this UN complex. I mean, where is this all going? Day after day, we get headlines like this. And to his point, we have seemingly no progress or none to speak of yet that means anything on a hostage deal.
I think the casualties are piling up on both sides, and both sides are getting frustrated and getting exhausted. Yesterday, I think 21 Israeli soldiers were killed, the highest death toll ever in an explosion in a building. And I think there's a search on both sides for some kind of a resolution. The fact that there might be a window opening for a ceasefire to release all hostages, I think, is a sign of progress. If we can get Egypt and other players in the region to really lean in, that does give us a path forward. But I think we have to underscore the brutality of what's happening there is impacting everyone, and they're still holding hostages. Hamas continues to hold hostages. There continue to be rockets landing in Israel. And until that stops, talk of a ceasefire, I think, is a little bit ridiculous.
Especially from the Israeli point of view, I suppose. We talk all the time about the other side of it, how brutal the attacks are on the people in the Gaza Strip. And they are. I mean, there's reportedly like 25,000 people dead. It's awful every single day. But a lot of the Israelis still look back at October 7th. I know you will put this up. You have a guest on your podcast, a survivor, right, of October 7th coming up, and the memories are still there, even though people have moved on to other conversations, I suppose.
I think here in America, we're so far away from it, it's easy to lose the humanity. And what I've been trying to do is bring forward stories of humanity. And the story I bring forward is Doreen Cohen. She's a 30-year-old mother who was trapped in a bomb shelter for about 30 hours with her husband, 3-month-old and 3-year-old.
Wow.
Right? And she talks about what it was like to be in there, how she was running out of food for her children, just the humanity of what she experienced. It's terrifying, gruesome portrayals of what was happening, but also explaining the heroism of one young woman to save her family. I think we have to try to understand these stories on both sides of the humanity involved and how pertinent and how relevant it still is. October 7th may feel like forever ago for us, but for the people of Israel and for Doreen Cohen and her family, it was yesterday and it will be forever.
We'll look that up on the Independent Americans. That's Paul's podcast, The Independent Americans. I do want to speak about Ukraine for a few minutes as well while you're here. The headline out of the Pentagon, you know, we knew we'd get to this point, I guess, at some point with all the back and forth in Washington. We're going to fund the war. They say, we don't have any money for you. I mean, we're running out of ammunition, and there's the headline from the AP, Pentagon has no more money for Ukraine, as they went to a meeting of 50 allies on support for Kyiv. And now what?
Now more Ukrainians die. Yesterday, a major civilian condominium was hit, and a 9-year-old girl was killed. Civilian casualties are going to continue to mount, and Russia's going to press their advantage. They've got plenty of artillery, they've got plenty of ammunition, and the Ukrainians are literally running out. So Ukrainians will die if the U.S. doesn't step up and Congress can't find a way forward. Putin will continue to advance. I think America's national security will be jeopardized, and the world will be less stable. I think we have to understand this is not a partisan issue, and we have to find a way to support all our allies at the same time, because they are literally on the front lines for freedom right now.
It may not be, but in today's Republican Party, I think it is to a big extent. I mean, one of the conversations we're having here is how parties have changed. We're talking about Democrats, unions years ago versus now, but think about Republicans years ago versus now and how they feel about issues like that. They have changed their approach. It's far more, isolationism or whatever you want to call it.
It's not John McCain and Colin Powell's party anymore, but we do still see a majority of Republicans supporting Ukraine. The question is, how do you get that funding? Do you link it to the border or not? And as we've talked about in the past, our Congress has to show they can move as quickly as the battlefields around the globe. Whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the border, whether it's Israel, we have to have a Congress that functions and stands with our allies, because our enemies aren't waiting. Right. Our enemies are going to continue to press their advantage, like we see in the Red Sea, like we see in other places around the globe. If our politics gets paralyzed, our enemies are going to pounce.
I think if they are waiting for anything, some of them might be looking at our calendar, waiting for November to see who wins too, which is another big story around the world because of the different approaches. Thank you, Paul. We'll talk to you again soon. Anytime. Paul Rieckhoff. Again, it's the Independent Americans. That's the podcast.